Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome to TrueCar's Industry Insider. And thank you for taking the time to join us either live or on the replay. We really, truly appreciate you hanging out with us. My name is Matt Jones. I'm the Corporate Marketing Director here at TrueCar, and I am lucky to be joined by our very own Mr. David Green. He is TrueCar's Senior Vice President of Major Accounts and Military Business Strategy. Hey, David, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Matt, and I think I'm the lucky one. Thanks for having me back. I think this is the second time, so I'm honored to be back on the show with you.
It is always a pleasure to have you on the show. And for those, Mr. Green, who don't know you, would you introduce yourself just a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I'm David Green. I'm with TrueCar. I'm one of Matt's teammates. Been with TrueCar, actually, Matt, next month will be 6 years, believe it or not. Prior to that, I spent 24 years in the retail world. Started selling cars in '91. It was the day after I got discharged from the Marine Corps. I was going to sell some cars till I figure out what I wanted to do. And 24 years later, I was fortunate enough to be work my way up through the variable ops and run a couple of dealerships, import, domestic, and luxury, including 2 Honda dealerships. My last stop, I was a managing partner at a Honda dealership in the Southwest. So that's my background, and looking forward to our conversation today. I know we have a really special guest.
Absolutely right, and awesome, and thank you, David. For folks on the call, if you're new to Industry Insider, the premise is really simple. We just want to bring on some of the industry's best and brightest minds to discuss all things related to retail automotive. And the goal is to collectively uncover opportunities and maybe share some tips and discuss tactics that can make us all, and when I say all, I mean everybody in automotive, just a little bit better. And on the show, up until this point so far, we've had some of the nation's top salespeople. We've had some of the nation's top GMs, trainers. We've even had Google's head of automotive retail jump in the show in order to share their perspectives, industry expertise. But today is extra special because for the very first time, we are going to be joined by an OEM. So our guest, Mr. Daniel Rodriguez, is the department head of used cars and certified pre-owned for the American Honda Motor Company. And our discussion today is just going to be based on today's used car market. So I'm very excited about this, but I know that you're pretty excited about this, David. And I think I heard you say why you are excited about this.
Yeah, it's a big deal for us, Matt. And I referenced when I joined TrueCar. So when I came on approximately 6 years ago, it was just 18% of the business on our site was pre-owned. TrueCar was predominantly a new car site. And really since the last, go back to January of 2020, so pre-pandemic, pre-inventory situation that we're in, we're at 40% of all the transactions that run through our dealer network are close or are pre-owned. So that includes certified pre-owned as well. So when you look at our goal that we set forth years ago is to get to 1-to-1, we're well underway. We're actually ahead of schedule. And so we're going to continue to scale that where TrueCar and representing all of our certified dealers are known as the place to go for not only a new car, but a pre-owned vehicle as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's why, again, we're also excited for the show. Okay, all right. So without any further ado, let's bring on today's featured guest, American Honda's Mr. Daniel Rodriguez.
Hi, everyone.
Hey,
thanks
Daniel,
for having us. No, thanks for taking the time to join us, and we really, really appreciate it. We know how busy your schedule is, and as Matt said, we're honored to have one of our factory partners on, and especially someone that's near and dear to my heart, such as Honda. With my background, and Matt has experience in Honda and Acura's dealerships as well. So, Dan, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and career with American Honda.
Well, actually, I guess could be considered an old timer. I'm, almost 30 years with American Honda. My kids, my oldest lived in 8 different homes, so we've, moved all over the country. I spent some time in the field and been in our national office for a good 18 years, a couple of different chairs there. I managed our digital operations here for a while. I managed our company fleet. I was manager of incentives as well. And most recently in this position, I managed our used car operations for both brands.
That's just that's awesome, and thank you for being here. And as David said, I'm particularly pleased because my retail career, the 12 years that I was in the retail arm, was all spent with Honda and Acura dealerships here in Southern California. So I feel like super thrilled that our first factory partner is you from Honda. So I think let's get started. And it's safe to say, if you're watching this show, you're probably in automotive, and if you're watching this show, it's safe to say you're probably aware that today's market is pretty unusual. It's pretty unique. And like I said earlier before, the goal of this show is to uncover opportunities for our dealer body. So Daniel, I want to start with this. What opportunities do you see for dealers in the used car market right now?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, it's really an exciting time. The used car market right now is extremely hot. And I mean, there's a lot of factors that are contributing to that. I mean, there's, low new car inventory because of supply chain issues. There's low used car supply because consumers were extending their leases, during the pandemic. And now, as we're coming out of it, there's really increased demand, for those as people are returning back to work and schools. But the biggest thing really is, the dynamic of new car. Back in 2012, 52% of the cars that were sold were under $30,000. Today it's hovering somewhere around 20%. So as a manufacturer, if we're going to bring in new young buyers to our brand, used and CPO has to be a pillar, to bringing them into our brand. So optimizing that opportunity is really a key.
That's a great point, Dan. Do you see I think you mentioned a couple. Is there kind of holistically some things that maybe dealers aren't maximizing on when we go to capitalize on this business?
Our stores have done a real good job, especially, the last couple of years, and capturing on that, I'll call that really near new, that, 0 to 4-year-old car. I mean, our network captures the majority of those, and they've done a good job with that. But there's two areas that there's really been growth in the used car market. It's that 0 to 4-year-old car, primarily driven by the off-lease portfolio. But the other area is 5 to 8 years old. And that's where the biggest opportunity is. I mean, today our stores capture, roughly 14% of that growing market, and because it's such a hot, and market and the numbers are so big, you see a lot of new, I'll call them disruptors, kind of salivating at that, and going after that business. The new car business in a good year is 17 million cars a year. On used, it's 40 million, so it's much bigger. So if we're going to, optimize bringing new people into our brand and, making that experience a good experience, our dealer network is really the best place to do it. They know the car's the best. When they recondition those cars, they're going to be reconditioned by technicians who've been trained on them. And the parts put on those cars are going to be the parts that were designed for the cars. So it's really kind of our challenge, is to realize, hey, this dynamic is changing. If we're going to bring new people to our brand, used has to be a bigger part of that strategy, and we need to make it easy for the customer to experience that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Totally agree. I think it's super important that you brought in that, I think conceptually we'll all know that, or think that the dealer is going to really exceed in that 0 to 4, but the 5 to 8 is really a primary conversation.
Yeah, there's such a wider audience, obviously, for that lower cost of sale car. And to your point, Dan, is the reconditioning things and the standards that take place at the dealership level, especially when you talk certified pre-owned and the specifications they have to hit, it's just much more value for the consumer.
So David, I know you had some questions you wanted to ask about CPO and CPO behaviors, but I'm going to jump in and ask it for you. So Dan, I got a big question for you. So what, in your opinion, what motivates a used car buyer to shop for something that's CPO?
There's a lot of factors that motivate the used car buyer. Most important thing is availability of product, finding what they're looking for. That buyer typically is a shorter buying cycle, so timeliness is really important. But the benefits of CPO is that peace of mind. That's really what resonates with those customers. It's the second biggest purchase for most people, even if it is a pre-owned car. So they want that peace of mind of knowing that should something go wrong, they're covered, and they're covered not by Joe Blow insurance, they're covered by the OEM's, warranty, where there's a network of 1,300 dealers that if I'm on vacation, and something goes wrong, I just go to the nearest Honda or Acura dealer, to get it taken care of. The other aspect really is financing. So CPO costs a little bit more, but, for us, we want to make it easy for that customer to experience our brand. So, it's worth it to us to provide that additional finance support, to make that transaction easier. And then, the reality of it is we're doing this because it brings new people in the brand. But from a loyalty standpoint, we see that these customers who come into our brand through CPO, almost half of them come back and buy a new car the next time. And on your side, it's close to 30%. So there's a benefit. We bring them in, we give them that peace of mind. We get to make that good first impression. And as they come in to visit, we're building that relationship that, solidifies the reason for them to stay in the family.
That's a great point. It's interesting you bring that up. So I mentioned the dealerships that I ran, particularly the Honda dealerships. I always looked at it. We had 4 different business units. We had our new Honda, we had our certified pre-owned Honda, we had our other Honda that maybe didn't qualify for CPO, and then we had other makes and models. And interesting on the approach is, we managed, and I know that American Honda preaches this, and all the brands do, is manage that CPO business unit like a separate franchise. It's its own business unit, and have that goal. Obviously, that you want to attain to. But it's interesting on the other side of that too. Internally, when we would be interacting with customers, I'd have to remind my team, when you're speaking with the consumer about a certified pre-owned car, to your point, it might be a little bit more expensive, but you can't say to a consumer, "Hey, yeah, but Dan, the reason is because this car's certified." That may or may not mean anything to the consumer. So when you lay out, rather than the feature, lay out the benefits, and you get into the extended warranty, and you get into the trip interruption, roadside assistance, and some of the other coverages and things. Should you guys even have a Sirius XM radio trial and things that come along with that? And so when you lay out the benefits there, it's much easier for the consumer to really understand that price value, plus the potential from American Honda Finance goes with that.
We need you back in one of our dealers again, Dave.
They're fortunate enough to have some wonderful people there. So I'll be bench strength if ever needed, but I'm sure they're in good hands.
That's awesome. So Dan, I want to follow up with that though. Like, let's think about the used car buyer, and maybe somebody who's not looking for a CPO, just a used car buyer. Are they looking for the same things as a CPO buyer, or do they have the same mentality, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think all those buyers are looking for that peace of mind and security. They're obviously a little more price sensitive, and quite frankly, CPO as it sits today is just vehicles that are 0 to 5 years old. So we think that there's a huge opportunity there. This year we added what we're calling branded used cars to our Tier 1 site. So a car that is up to 10 years old, is now showing on our site. And we're in the process of launching a warranty program that we're going to provide for that group of cars that is 5 to 10 years old as well. And some benefits. So to provide to that customer, that same peace of mind, maybe not as long of a warranty, but leverage some of the things that we do, the same inspection process. And we were the first manufacturer, and we did this a couple of years ago, where we launched what we call a digital checklist. So we digitize the inspection process, and each car goes through a specific, checklist, which all manufacturers do. But the unique thing about us, and it's really a core philosophy of Honda, is we really believe in that transparency. We're proud of what we do to bring our cars up to a certain standard, and kind of stack the deck for that good experience. So if you go onto our site and you click on one of our certified cars, for that specific car, you can see the inspection checklist that was done for that car and all the things that were done to bring it up to standard. So we're going to leverage that same thing with our branded used car program, along with the warranty, provide, maybe look at providing some sort of initial maintenance to just get them acclimated to the dealer. And we think that with that growing 5 to 8 year old car, that's really a key for us, especially as I mentioned earlier, with 20% of the cars being, under $30,000, we really need to look at making it easy for the customer to experience our brand by having these benefits. We think it's really a key, to the future, and building that customer base.
It's an interesting point, and it gets back to your point earlier, Dan, is it allows you, again, another level to ladder the consumer up. So maybe they go non-certified and then can come back, go certified, and then the next vehicle may be new. So it really just expands the brand and, brings in consumers to the Honda experience that maybe they've never had before.
Yeah, it's exactly the way we look at it. I mean, again, we want to make that journey, a lifetime, and how many people, their first car was a new car, wasn't mine, so, how to indoctrinate them to our brand. And again, like I said earlier, stack the deck for a good experience. Our dealers know our cars the best. They're going to do the right job, as far as reconditioning them. They're going to put the right parts on them because they want to make sure that customer has a good experience. So they're primed to get the next vehicle as a Honda or an Acura.
I think
makes total sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I'm really fond of the idea of bringing those super into the fold on the dealership level, because again, you're right. Who does have a first car that's brand new? I mean, we're all coming through this process, but maybe this is going to get some people some consumers who might have already decided they were going to go private party, but when they hear these things, say, maybe I really need to hedge my bets a little bit better by going straight to the dealership, and now they're invited into our atmosphere a little bit. I think it's a genius plan. I'm very excited to hear that. And speaking of consumers and people who bought cars, here at TrueCar, we recently surveyed about 2,000 people who had recently purchased a used car from a franchise dealer. And we asked them, how did they dispose of the vehicle that they were replacing? And it probably shouldn't be a surprise. 58% of those folks said that they traded in what they had for the new car that they were buying. But there's obviously more to the story. And I know, David, there was a part of the story that really stuck out to you. So I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah, when it's interesting, Dan, when we look at this information, and we do studies all the time, obviously, is besides the 56% that traded in the vehicle, there was an astounding 21% of these approximately 2,000 people that chose to sell their vehicle to private party. So approximately 1 out of 5 went that direction. We are led to believe and feel that there could be some perception things in there. Maybe I'm going to get a better value. But as you mentioned earlier, dealers are providing really, really high valuations on these vehicles, so they can get especially same brand. And then, from the consumer standpoint, they may or may not be participating in some tax credit savings by trading in their vehicle, as opposed to selling private party. And then, for the buyer of the end user, buying private party versus buying from a dealership, especially certified pre-owned dealership, there's obviously the benefits I mentioned earlier. Well, you guys have a rock solid certified program with powertrain, some additional coverages, roadside assistance, trip interruption, and things like that. But so there could be benefits that the person buying private could be missing out on it, in addition to this incentive rate that you mentioned. So I know the one thing that's really important to you is how can dealers possibly better interact with these 21% of these people that have these available, assuming there were some opportunities there, give or take. What do you see from the OEM side of ways that dealers can capture these opportunities and provide consumers with a better value?
That's a great point, David. And I come back to what we talked about earlier, that 5 to 8 year old car, being a big growing opportunity. For the 0 to 4, it's really pretty easy for us. I mean, most of that, comes from our off lease portfolio. Our dealers get first crack at that, and we do a pretty good job there. But that 5 to 8 year window is a little more challenging. The average customer who doesn't lease is keeping their car for 8 years. So, how do we get that source of inventory, in? I mean, we got a great story to tell, so part of us, it's incumbent on us to tell that story to the consumer. But the other part is we've got to make it easy for them, to do that. I mean, there's all sorts of things dealers can do as far as data mining their existing customers, and bringing them in, and, looking at other networks, Facebook Marketplace, I mean, the list, goes on and on. But one of the things that they can do better is make that transaction a little easier for the consumer. I'm going to share a story with you. I just over the holiday weekend, I wanted to visit my mom, my 91-year-old mom in Chicago. And kind of had the tough conversation about, it's probably time for you to stop driving. I
Well,
mean,
that's had to be a tough conversation.
it's like at 16 years old, you can't wait to drive because it gives you freedom. At 91, you don't want to stop because you don't want to lose that freedom.
Yep.
So we had the conversation, mom agreed, and, wanted to get an idea of what the pricing was. Well, of course, I want to go through our network first. And as I'm going through to get that pricing, in both cases, in her local market, I had to lie and say I was looking at this other car to replace it. That's not easy. A customer can go to one of the big boxes and say, hey, I want to sell my car to you. It's easy and they can execute it. We need to change that paradigm. We need a paradigm shift, to get, our stores to realize, hey, this is a source of inventory. It doesn't necessarily mean they're in the market for a new car. And it's probably the best place to get it than trying to find, especially with those older cars, the leftovers that somehow make it to an auction because someone else bought them and couldn't sell them and then, are sourcing it that way. I think both the stores, and we have tremendously smart businessmen, that once we get that message out there, they'll be looking to make those changes to make it easier. And then us as a manufacturer, we need to leverage our site, to let customers know, hey, we're a great source for it, and create that handshake where they can go from our site to the dealer site to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. And it gets back to your earlier point is, even acquiring cars. I know, a lot of dealers are doing a tremendous job in doing that. But it just brings them into that family, have that positive experience on their disposal. So when they do come back for another car, or even another family member, it gives them something to, as a referral, and again, can ladder up through your various levels of inventory. So it makes total sense.
And I think it's super important right now because we did a little bit of digging through the data to actually figure out on our side, what does the average trade-in look like from somebody who's buying a used car, right? Everybody knows, we're not even thinking about new car buyers right now. Used car buyers, those folks who are trading in their car, on average, what do those cars look like? And Dan, I bet you won't be surprised to hear this. It is exactly the target market of that 5 to 8 year old car that we've been talking about this show. They're on average, they're somewhere around, I think it was 6.83 to 7.25 years old. And they had somewhere between 90 and 105,000 miles. And that's where the average, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these cars that are just being underutilized because of being sold, and not necessarily being brought into the dealer network. So I think that your call outs for making the transaction a little bit easier, maybe a little bit more upfront on the dealer side, and at the OEM side, I just think it is absolutely fantastic. If these, inventory pressures continue, I can't see a reason why somebody wouldn't want to do that. I know people are getting, they're becoming a little bit more aggressive trying to pick up cars from consumers because every time I go out to my car, there's a card on it, hey, you gonna sell your car? Now I gotta be honest, sometimes it's like the card says we buy junk cars and I don't know how I feel about that, but I do know I do know that there's a contingency of people out there who are putting boots on the ground and saying, we want to get this. Unless I think it probably makes sense to make sure our dealer partners are doing the same, especially knowing what's being sold and the benefits. Dan, you told a quick story. I want to tell a quick one about a car that I sold privately. And this is one of the reasons why I advocate for people to sell to dealers. Now, my situation is not unique. I had a very inexpensive car. It was a Volkswagen Bug. And I sold it to a buddy of mine who was in a bit of a pinch. And I sold him that car for $300. He needed a car. I didn't need the car anymore. Sold it to him for $300. The paperwork transfer wasn't done correctly. 7 or 8 months later, I'm getting ready to buy my first house. You do your whole credit thing, and I see that I have a collections account from something called Rickenbacker. I don't know what Rickenbacker is. It turns out Rickenbacker was a tow yard that had towed the car that I sold to my buddy for $300 because he never registered it. Rickenbacker came to me looking for me to pay that extra money. And of course, it was exactly the time I needed to have a collection on my credit report when I'm buying a house. Perfect timing, right? But seeing that in person was like, why would I go through all this nonsense of paperwork, somebody coming to my house that I don't necessarily know, all these different things, when I could go to a dealership, and especially right now when dealerships do have these more aggressive valuations, it just makes more sense. So we are encouraging people to really, really look at that. So sorry for belaboring the point, but that's something that I just hold really dear to my heart, man. Like, I paid $800 to remove a collection account for a car that I sold for $300. Why go through that? Get it done right.
Yeah, definitely a couple of lessons there. One, I think, is doing business with a friend, and then as I'm listening, Dan, you've met Matt, and for those of you watching, most of you may have not met Matt. He's not the smallest guy in any given room, so I was just trying to picture him in a Volkswagen Bug. I was like, I paid $300 just to see it, so I can help you out, get you some of your money back. Yeah, Dan, kind of getting back on our conversation. So, obviously the scarcity of pre-owned driven by the scarcity of new car inventory. As you said, people are extending leases, et cetera, and so forth. And so that cycle has just been delayed. So, from your lens, there in Torrance, how long do you see the current inventory levels on pre-owned lasting? Do you see them getting back to what we've all known as normal for several years now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, really, we do see them, coming back to normal and quite frankly, growing. Most of that is driven by, the off-lease portfolio, which, for us looks pretty robust, for the next couple of years. We're not alone in that, that assessment, the forecast for CPO industry-wide, is, also to grow. So, we're really looking at that large off-lease portfolio coming back is, again, our way to bring in new customers, to our brand. The big challenge for all of us, though, is that 5 to 8 year old window and staving, I'll call them the disruptors, into grabbing, that business, because it is growing, because they're not coming back, like an off-lease unit does. We need to get creative, on how we're bringing those customers back in, and showing them that we're we're more than a viable source, for them to sell their car.
Yep, no doubt. And again, brings them into a situation where they can participate in certified pre-owned and new cars, and again, gets them exposed to the Honda brand, which obviously both near and dear to Matt and I's hearts. Just a wonderful value for the consumer. To
Matt's story, earlier, looking at some research that, we just, completed, and at least I wasn't surprised, when you looked at, in network and out of network, trade-in activity, the female buyer is much more likely to do it, in network. And I think there's, a security, issue there, and that's, another form of peace of mind that, is a great story that we have to tell, and I think it's incumbent on us to figure out the best way to tell that story.
Yeah.
Yep, makes sense.
And
we go ahead, Matt.
Oh no, I was just going to say, with that rising, rising tide lifts all boats. Everything's becoming more expensive right now, and just. Somebody selling a 7-year-old car with 100,000 miles, that's not a $2,000 car anymore. That's a lot of money that we're talking about transacting, right? To make sure that the person is getting, verified funds, it's done safely, it's done, accurately. I just think that's just incredibly important, especially now, considering the prices that people are going to have to pay for this type of vehicle and the financing options that are going to be, with these programs that are happening at the store. So I'm just super enthused about this. David, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it sounded like you would.
No, you made my point. So I'm right in line with it.
Well, one of the things I always try to do is to make sure that we're, super respectful of everybody's time, not just, Mr. Honda on the show with us or Mr. Green, but also for the participants who are watching the show. We know we're going live right in the middle of the workday, so we're gonna wrap up here. But hopefully, if you're watching live, if you enjoyed this, share it with your friends afterwards, because it's going to be sitting right here on the same page. And we're going to make sure that you have the availability to make sure that everybody sees this if you think they could benefit from it. But before we wrap up, just wanted to ask, David or Dan, do you guys have anything that you'd like to leave our viewers with, or is there anything that we didn't touch on that we need to jump into before we wrap for the day?
Dan, go ahead.
Well, on my part, thanks, guys. Appreciate the time. It was a lot of fun, and appreciate the platform to share some of the things we're thinking about doing, and how we're really trying to make it easy for customers to experience, what we have to offer.
Absolutely.
That's perfect. Yeah, and Dan, for me, just thank you for your own time and your team in preparation for this call, and again, thank Honda for being a tremendous OEM partner with TrueCar, And again, to all the certified dealers out there, thank you so much for your business. We really appreciate your partnership. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't also thank if there's any TrueCar employees that are watching this broadcast. Thanks for all you continue to do. We appreciate all your efforts. So that's it from me, Matt.
All right. This has been an awesome conversation. I hope everybody who took part gathered something. And again, I say it with the utmost sincerity and respect. If you found value in this conversation, please share it with your friends and colleagues within automotive industry. The more people who get to hear this, the better we can all be. And, and the cool thing is that this is free, so why not share it? Why not? Dan, it's been an incredible honor to have you on the show. I hope that this is the first conversation of many that we have over the coming months and coming years. We're super excited. And you telling us, on this platform about the under 10-year-old car now being found on the Honda site, I think that's major. I think that's super duper major. And to hear about the upcoming plans for these vehicles, for our dealer partners and for our consumers, I think that's super big. So thank you for sharing that with us here.
Oh, thank you, guys.
All right, guys. Again, thank you. This is Industry Insider. On behalf of me and David, I'd like to wish you and all of us at TrueCar, thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you on our next show.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.